Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be my foundation wrap-up. So basically, I did 10 days of wear test of best-selling drugstore foundations, and I did like extreme close-up, wore them for 10 hours. You could see the texture of my skin and everything, natural lighting, with no filters. And today, I'm doing the wrap-up, letting you know which ones were the best one, which one were the worst ones, and then a few that were kind of meh, because they were neither amazing or terrible. So I will link the playlist down below if you haven't seen it. Today I will also be including the prices and mentioning also the shade range because it does matter. So let's start with some terrible foundations. Obviously the reasons the foundation didn't work for me might be the reason it would work for you, because I do have combination skin. So my cheeks are normal, my T-zone definitely gets oily, mostly my forehead, and then I do get some dehydration, mostly on my nose and then sometimes in between my brows and chin. So I feel like it gives me an idea if it's going to work for dry skin or oily skin, generally speaking. But sometimes they might be too drying for me, but they would work amazingly if you live somewhere really hot and humid and you have super oily skin. You know what I mean? So, the first foundation I want to talk about, because it is definitely the worst one. I don't get it, guys. I just don't. Milani Conceal and Perfect 2-in-1 Foundation. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the basics. $9.99 on the Ulta website, and they have 23 shades available, although some of them are online only, so it's not the worst, not the best shade range here. I appreciate that it comes with a pump, which I do get a little bitter with some of the other applicators you're going to notice, but I have the shade 00 Light Natural, which I did swatch. It does oxidize to become a little too peachy for my taste. It's definitely a summer shade for me, but I bought it when they first released them, and then they came out with, like, I believe 2 more shades that are lighter, so I might be able to find a shade in there. It definitely doesn't go very fair though. It does have a faint, like, paint scent. That's how I describe it. I just wanted to mention it because I know some people are very sensitive to scent. Now, the real issues. The reason it's definitely the worst out of all of them is, first off, when I first apply it, it looks amazing. Honestly, full coverage, and I just feel like it looks nice, but it doesn't set. Some foundations, you know how they will, like, dry to a matte or, like, powdery finish? Not this. It needs to be set, and I mean needs to be set. Otherwise, it will start emphasizing every issues you have on your face. Like, I feel like full coverage foundations are always pushed for, like, oh, if you have acne. And it's hard because you will have more texture, you will probably be more oily, and then you might have dry patches where you try to kill your pimples, which happened to me a few times when I was doing those wear tests. And this will emphasize everything because it separates so badly. It is the only foundation I was not able to wear for 10 hours because I just wanted to wash it off. It looked terrible, like literally that bad. And because I wasn't reapplying powder throughout the day just as a, you know, standard test, it was just starting to move around, accumulate. I make a lot of faces, and I felt like it was starting to accumulate in any expression lines, and it was just terrible looking. It was emphasizing my texture, like in between my brows, I become like, I am dehydrated, but I do become oily there. So it was just like a weird mix of being oily and dry at the same time. And honestly, by far the worst long-term foundation. Like, if I wear it throughout the day, it's too much. But if I wear it for a video, it looks really nice. So I get frustrated with it because every time I try it again, I'm like, it looks great. What was I talking about? And then I'm like, oh, that's why. Because even if I repowder, I still feel like it starts looking more like texture on my skin. It doesn't blur my pores, but it also doesn't emphasize them until it starts becoming a bit more oily on my skin. And it's just like, it's an oil-free foundation, but it was by far the one that was the oiliest on my face. So this is a huge no for me, although again, it is a bestseller drugstore foundation, so I'm assuming some people do like it, but I don't. The second foundation that did not work for me, like, at all is by NYX. This is the Can't Stop, Won't Stop Full Coverage Foundation. It is $15, which makes it the second most expensive out of all of the ones I will be talking about, but it has 45 shades, which makes it the one with the best shade range, / it's also the one that is the most evenly distributed. So personally, I have the shade Porcelain, and it is a neutral undertone, which for some reasons I struggle to find at the drugstore. It's either very pink and peachy or very yellow, and this one is definitely more even, and I feel like it's very evenly distributed. The shade range is going to be something for everyone. With that said, they say full coverage, more medium coverage for my taste. The reason it didn't work for me is going to be the reason it's going to work for other people. This is so freaking drying, but I mean so drying. I get oily. I do get oily, but this is too much. It reminds me of the, like, Becca primer, if you've ever tried that. This is the foundation version of this. It just sucks all the moisture out of my face. It feels like I'm wearing, like, actually also the L'Oreal loose powder, which I felt like I was wearing, like, not clay, what's the other word? that white powder stuff. It feels like, I just feel like I'm dying underneath this. So it does emphasize any dehydration you will have, but it is super waterproof. So if you live somewhere that's warm and humid and you have oily skin and you just need something that stays on your face that will not rub off, this will stay. It's literally the foundation that whenever I was showing you, you know, how it oxidized in my wear test video, which again, I'll link down below. This one, I couldn't remove the swatch because it's actually waterproof. So definitely sticks to your face. At the same time, I didn't feel like it was really controlling my oils though. Like I did get oily at the end of the day, but I didn't repowder. So I feel like it's definitely something that could be helped with just repowdering throughout the day. But at least it doesn't move around, which is greatly appreciated. So definitely didn't separate or anything, but for me, it's just too much. Like I might want to try it again during the summer, but I still feel like it's going to be too much for me / where I live. But again, people that struggle with foundation not staying on their face, you're gonna love this, but I can't deal. Now I have a bunch of meh. I will start with the one that are the most meh, and then I'll go and finish with the most Revlon Colorstay Foundation. This is still a cult classic. I feel like it's still a bestseller out there. People still love this, and I had tried this years ago when my skin was more dry and I used to only wear like light coverage foundation because I didn't need any coverage. I'm a little bitter over past Emily. But I hated this at the time, but I haven't tested it again in like years. So when I saw it was still a drugstore bestseller, I was like, you know what? This is my chance to test it again. So first off, now they do have a pump with this. I feel like back in the day we didn't have a pump. And now they have a combination oily and also a dry skin version, which I haven't tried. It is $12.99, so it's a pretty average price. And they do have 31 shades, which is an improvement. I feel like back in the day, it didn't have that many shades. And from the swatches I'm able to find online, it seems to be okay. But I would have to see them all in person, but I feel like sometimes you just never have the full range, right? It really depends on the stores you go to. I feel like some Walmarts I go to, they will have like a bunch of deeper shades and some of them will have none. So I feel like it will depend on where you live. It's another foundation that for me, I feel like it just doesn't set. Like it needs to be set with a bunch of powder, otherwise it will just never dry. I feel like it transfers. I feel like it definitely emphasized dehydration, like even on my forehead, which I feel like every time I see dehydration on my forehead, it's because of foundations. Because otherwise I never notice it. So I'm accusing the foundation. It does have like medium coverage. I didn't feel like it was blurring nor overly emphasizing my pores, but my main issue is the fact that it sat weirdly on my skin. It felt like it sat on top of my skin. I could kind of just feel it and see it, and I just didn't like it. But the positive though is that it does control the oil. I feel like I didn't feel like I was super oily on my forehead at the end of the day compared to other foundations, or so if you don't have any dehydration, I can understand why people do enjoy this. Personally, I felt like the shade that I have, which is 200 Nude, definitely ended up being too peachy for me. Again, it's one that is supposed to be like more cool tone, and it's definitely super peachy. So overall for me, I feel like I can find something that works better for me, but I can understand why other people do enjoy it. So ultimately for me, it's a meh towards the no side. I don't feel like I would wear this again. I would probably have to find a summer shade and just use it during the summer when I have less dehydration. Another one that is a meh shade / kind of a no. Oh my god, it decided to get its revenge on me. Holy schmoly. Whoa. It's now officially a no, because F you too. Wet n Wild Photofocus Foundation. I have tried so hard, and I mean so hard to love this. I've tried to love you, and you keep doing this to me. We both agree that we can't stand each other. At $5.99, it is the most affordable foundation out of all 12 I will be mentioning. They do have 20 shades, which isn't the biggest shade range, but at least it's pretty evenly distributed, so there's that. It does smell strongly of paint. Personally, again, it's not my least favorite scent out of all of these. And it comes with the most annoying applicator. Like, why does it have a spatula? Like, I can't even really like scrape the side. So it's like a tease. It's like so pointless. It really annoys me. I would rather have like no spatula than a spatula. Like, give me a pump or give me nothing. Like, this is just, again, I get frustrated over this for no reason. But this foundation is raved about so much. And I mean so much. Everyone that has dry skin seems to think that this is like the best foundation ever. Yet it just really emphasized my dehydration. If I could redo one wear test, it would be this one, because one, I was so exhausted that day. And second of all, I feel like it didn't look as bad as it has looked in the past for me. I feel like it kind of gets oily and it sits on my skin. It kind of starts moving around and accumulating on my dry patches, and it's just a mess. And it just starts looking so weird on my pores especially, which I mean, we all have pores, right? I don't use filters so you can see them when I do my close-ups, and it just felt like I could almost see lines in my pores instead. It just made them terrible looking. But I do think that if you have no dry patches and if you live somewhere that is more like cold, I feel like it wore better again during the winter than it does during the summer, because during the summer I'm oily so fast, and again it finds any dry patches that I didn't even know I had and just sits there. So not a fan, and clearly we now officially hate each other. So I'm moving you to the no section and not the meh, because let's talk about this. The new L'Oreal 24-Hour Fresh Wear Foundation. Everyone has been talking about this and their concealer, and I actually reviewed both of them at the same time. Again, the wear test, I'll link it down below, but it comes with a pump. I'm so easily satisfied with this. Like, honestly, they should all come with a pump. $14.99 and 30 shades, so a pretty decent shade range for sure. I have the shade 415, which is definitely a summer shade for me. So, listen, Linda, this has the worst scent ever. I have a horrible sense of smell. I'm not like usually that sensitive to scent, but this is just, why? Like, why? And I put some on my nose, I'm gonna smell it all day. It smells like perfumey, powdery, floral. Like, I hate the scent. Like, I don't want my foundation to smell like anything. Can we just establish that? Like, I don't need my foundation to compete with perfume or deodorant. Like, I just don't. And if I were to want that, this would definitely not be the scent I would want. It's a very liquidy formula, as you can see. It's supposed to be good for people with drier skin, and it says that it's supposed to look flawless for 24 hours, which it is definitely a light, medium, but natural finish. I didn't feel like it was emphasizing my pores, but I did feel like it was sitting a little bit on top of my skin, which I feel like sometimes I'm noticing a lot of foundations that are supposed to be good for dry skin, like this one or the Neutrogena one in the past that I've tried, just sit on my skin weirdly, and this is a little bit like that too. Personally, I would recommend it more if you have like normal to like a little oily skin, especially if you don't have a lot of acne or things to cover. I feel like it looks very natural for that. But my issue is that my nose looked like a mess, like a huge mess. So for me, this wouldn't be a foundation I would gravitate towards, because I do have other light coverage foundation, like medium, like BB creams, for example, that I adore, that don't do that to me. So why would I grab this over the other ones? You know what I mean? Especially with the scent. Honestly, right there, the scent is a huge deal breaker for me. So just for that, for me, it is in the meh towards no category. But if the scent doesn't bother you, if you don't have a lot of acne to cover, and if you don't have dehydration, this could work for you. I never thought this foundation would be in my meh section, although it is in the meh side and not really the meh. So, the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless Foundation. I used to love this, and I mean love this. We'll get back to this. Let me, before I forget, $7.99 and 38 shades. They have improved their color range so much, and doesn't come with a pump, which very faint foundation scent, really nothing to talk about. So like I was saying, I used to really like this when my skin was more normal to dry and I had like no acne, no really dehydration or anything. So I feel like this performed really well for that. It was like a perfect everyday skin-like foundation. It's very like light medium, but definitely on the light side, but it looks straight up light skin. So if you just need your skin to just be a little bit more even, this works perfectly for this. My issue is that the more I have tried it again and again and again, once my skin changed, I feel like it's now not the best for my more oilier skin, because it starts to get quite oily and then move around a little bit more. So every time I try it again, I'm like, it's not exactly as I remember it, and I like it less and less. So I'll link again down below. I did a half and half comparing it to the Maybelline SuperStay Foundation, which I'll mention in actually a while, because I just feel like it clings to dry patches more than I would like it to be, and it just gets oilier faster than I need it to be. I feel like I can find something else for that price that will work better for me, but I remember it fondly. So if you have drier skin, even though it says matte and poreless, I used to mix it with the dewy version, and it just made it perfect. So I still think it's a good foundation, again, if you have different needs than me. So not a bad one, it's just not the best one for me anymore. The Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define Foundation. I feel like everyone fell in love with the concealer and they came out with the foundation version, which literally is the foundation version, because what is this? Before I forget, $12, and they have 35 shades. It does seem to be pretty evenly distributed. With that said, all the dark shades seem to be only available online, so I'm hoping it's not like that everywhere in stores and everything. But yeah, the foundation. What is this? I don't get it. Again, I get super frustrated with this because I need way more product on my face than I do under my eyes, so I need to like go back in there so many times that it's just so pointless and frustrating. It definitely does have that paint scent to me. I have the shade F4, which is definitely a good shade match for me. I feel like it's not too cool, it's not too warm, it's definitely neutral. And what I like is that it looks freaking flawless, like literally flawless. My pores are gone, it just looked blurred like I've been Facetuning on a daily basis. It doesn't overly emphasize my dehydration. It does need to be like set, and like I need to reapply powder throughout the day, which again during the wear test I didn't do it, but during my real life I do. And it just prevents it from starting to separate a little bit. It's nothing terrible, but it's definitely something to keep in mind if you want to wear it for a really long time and you have oily skin. I would recommend repowdering. I could even see this working well if you're going out and you have drier skin. Obviously, as always, make sure you moisturize properly. You might want to exfoliate or anything, but otherwise I could see this working really well for a lot of different skin types. If I know I can repowder, I definitely do enjoy this. So for me, it's a on the verge of being yes. The CoverGirl True Blend Matte Made Foundation. I love this. Was it 2 years ago? Last year when it came out. I wore it like all summer and really loved it because it is a very good everyday foundation for me because it just looks like skin and it is medium coverage. It's just kind of all I need on a daily basis. $11.49 and they have 40 shades and it's very evenly distributed, obviously with the new spokeswoman. They definitely improved their shade range in general, but the foundation is really great for this. Mine is L40, which is definitely, again, a summer shade for me. It doesn't overly emphasize my dehydration. It doesn't emphasize my pores. It doesn't start separating throughout the day too. I do prefer to repowder it, but as long as it doesn't start transferring and everything, I can deal with the foundation, and this one doesn't, so that's all I'm asking. So yeah, overall, a good foundation for me because it's perfect on a daily basis. It just looks like skin. Like it a lot. I've talked a lot about this foundation. This is the Maybelline SuperStay Foundation. This is definitely a yes for me. Full coverage, definitely. It still looks pretty much like skin, which is surprising, and it doesn't overly emphasize my dehydration on my nose, which is like full coverage, not emphasizing dehydration seems to be a really hard mix to find. I definitely find myself also mixing it with some moisturizer whenever I want to transform it in like BB cream, kind of like everyday foundation if I don't feel like I need the coverage, but it looks just really great. The only thing is I feel like it emphasizes a tiny bit my pores, but I feel like when I use powder it kind of fixes the issue. So it does dry matte on its own, but I prefer setting it. I feel like it just makes it look better. Ooh, and $11.99 and 28 shades, which is pretty evenly distributed. I believe at first they only had 16 shades, right? So they definitely improved their shade range. Definitely recommend this foundation. It's just such a simple foundation. It has a pump. I don't smell anything. It's just such a nice foundation. It doesn't start wearing weirdly, it doesn't separate, it doesn't get too oily, it doesn't start moving around, it doesn't transfer. I believe that was one of the claims of this foundation, or was it this one? I mean, it doesn't move around, doesn't transfer. I didn't have to like remove my face from someone else. Like, it's just a really solid foundation. I've talked about it in length. It's a thumbs up. It's a yes. I was editing this video when I realized that I completely forgot to talk about one foundation, which is extra funny because it was literally my review whenever I did the wear test. The L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte Foundation. I was so blown away whenever I tried this again. This is an old school favorites. It's still a holy grail. It's still a bestseller. Before I forget, $12.99, and they have 12 shades. Apparently on the website they're saying they have 22. I have never seen 22. I wish I could have seen 22 because the color range 12 shade is definitely not enough. It's really, really hard to find a perfect match. It's actually the worst one of all the ones I've mentioned. I have the shade 102, which is an okay match. It does oxidize. I did swatch whenever I did the wear test 101, 102, and 103, and it's the one that matches me the closest. It's definitely more of a summer shade for me than like all year round. 101 is definitely a little too peachy because they do oxidize quite a bit. So it definitely doesn't make it easier to actually find your match. This one is a squeezy tube, which is perfectly fine by me, and I don't feel like there's a scent to it. What I liked is that I was so blown away, honestly. When I tried it on, you can see because I was like, first impression kind of like a few years later, and this is amazing. It blurs your pores. It looks like your Photoshop in real life. It applies so thinly, but it gives you medium to full coverage. I didn't feel it on my face. I was so impressed by it. Didn't overly emphasize my dry patches, didn't emphasize my pores. It definitely made them disappear. It didn't separate throughout the day. I felt like it really controlled my oils and it didn't transfer. It was just overall such a fantastic foundation, and I'm shocked that they don't have more shades at this point because this is so freaking good. It dries to a kind of matte powdery finish on its own. So if you have dry skin, I used to use it to go out, like I said, so that was okay for that. On a daily basis, it was a little too much coverage. It wasn't something I needed. I would use it now as a everyday foundation if I feel like I'm breaking out and I really want more coverage because I don't feel on my skin and it does control my oils and I don't feel like I need to repowder constantly. But if you have dry skin, it might be a bit much on a daily basis. But yeah, overall, it's just such a fantastic foundation. Like, blurs your pores, looks amazing, doesn't change throughout the day. And if you have oily skin, it doesn't make you oilier. It kind of controls the oil a bit. It doesn't overly emphasize any like acne if you have any texture and everything. Honestly, just blown away by this foundation. And it's just funny how I had forgotten about it when I did the wear test and now when I'm doing this video. So I'm here to say fantastic foundation, definitely a yes for me. The Physicians Formula, the Healthy Skin Foundation. I have the shade LN4, which one of the only negative about this is the shade range. They have 20 shades, but they are evenly distributed and such an improvement. Like, I feel like back in the day, everything they would come out with would have like 2 or 3 shades, and it's... But this one, not only do they have a good amount of every skin tone, but they have the skin undertone, which... Thank you. It should always be that way. So like I said, I'm LN4, so light neutral 4. And it's just a really, really good match for me at the moment. I do have the shade LC1 during the winter, which is an okay color. I just feel like it's definitely not light enough if you have very fair skin. But again, with 20 shades, it's kind of bound to happen. It is $15.99, which is the most expensive foundation here. I do think it's worth it because it's so freaking good, which I feel like it's literally how I would describe Physicians Formula. Like, their products are a little bit expensive for drugstore, but they're always so freaking good, so totally worth it. The main negative is... Do we need to talk about this again? I hate this. And it definitely smells strongly of paint. But everything else about it, I just adore it. This foundation claims to be good for every skin type, which I feel like everything is claiming to work for everyone lately, and I just roll my eyes at it, except that this one is actually kind of true. It has like medium to full coverage, but yet it looks so freaking natural. It looks like my skin, it looks like a satin finish, and I don't feel like I need to go back and conceal anything except if I have like a really big pimple, which I did for like one today, but everything else is just the foundation, and it just gives me a good amount of coverage. It looks like skin, it doesn't start separating, it doesn't start oxidizing weirdly or just starting transferring. I shaded that foundation so much today. I do repowder when I wear it, but that's kind of the reason why it works for like everyone. If you have dry skin, it doesn't overly emphasize the dehydration, and if you have oily skin, repowdering is fine as long as the foundation doesn't separate, and it doesn't. So overall, such a thumbs up, absolutely adore it, definitely recommend it. I totally think it is worth the money. Last but not least, my new baby. I adore it so much. The Catrice HD Liquid Coverage Foundation, mattifying second skin effect, lasts up to 24 hours. I adore the concealer, this little guy, and they obviously have the foundation, so everyone was telling me, why are you not trying the foundation? It's just as good. And I was like, I don't know, and ooh, why did I wait? This is amazing. It does have a pipette, so it is very, very liquidy. They have 18 shades, which I believe they used to have like 4 or 5, which really was really terrible. Same thing with the concealer, but they have increased their color range. They have 18 shades, which again, not the best, but definitely still an improvement. I have the shade 20 Rose Beige, and it's a strictly summer shade. It is the second lightest one, so if you have very fair skin, you're not going to be able to find a shade in here because it definitely dries much darker. Although if you have very fair skin, you probably already know by now that white foundation will be your best friend. Also, it is $10.99, but what I like is that it looks like skin, it's just magical, and it controls my oil without emphasizing my dehydration. This is one of those foundations that like dries on its own to a powdery finish, so that's why if you have dry skin, you don't need to powder it. And if you have oily skin, you will powder it anyway, and you're just going to be grateful that it really controls the oil. It's one of the only foundations here that at the end of the day, 10 hours later, I wasn't like super oily on my forehead, which is just... It didn't overly emphasize my pores, it didn't start settling into any lines or pores or anything. It's just overall such a magical foundation for me. And they do say like second skin but full coverage, and yeah, I feel like my first instinct every time I talk about it is to say it's medium, but it's definitely full because I don't feel like I need to go and cover anything afterwards. So it just looks so natural that it gives you the impression that it is medium coverage, but it covers. So basically the only thing negative about it is the color range and the fact that it oxidizes a lot. But it doesn't continue oxidizing throughout the day, you know what I mean? So it's just like you first apply it, it dries, and then you're like, ooh, it's a bit dark. So definitely go a shade lighter with this one. But it is overall a strong yes for me, a great discovery. I will be wearing this a ton this summer. It's actually been really interesting to test these foundations back to back like this because I was really able to notice which ones were emphasizing dehydration, which ones were not controlling my oil, and vice versa. and just back to back like this, really being able to see which ones were actually worth the money for me, which one really didn't work for me. And I'm surprised that it's very evenly distributed, the ones that really didn't work for me, the ones that are like meh to positive meh, and then the ones that are like amazing and favorites for me. So I hope you enjoyed this series. Again, I will link the playlist down below if you want to see any of these in close up and just how they wore throughout the day with all the details. But overall, I think this was pretty successful. I'm considering this part of my best at the drugstore series, so if you are looking for more products that are amazing, drugstore price, I will link that playlist down below too. Let me in the comment section which ones you would like to see next. Concealers, bronzers, let me know. I'm definitely open to suggestions. Don't forget to give this one a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe because you definitely don't want to miss any future videos, and I will be putting some on the screen that I recommend you check out, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!